Spoken and Phonetics for Changes and Adult Learners.
IELTS Speaking Tests Part 2 and 3, Day 13, Part 2. Here's a cue card. Describe a teacher who has influenced you in your education. You should say where you met them, what subject they taught, what was special about them, and explain why this person influenced you so much. You will have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to think about the topic, what you're going to say. You can make some notes to help you if you wish. The answer: I consider myself lucky to get several very good teachers throughout my academic years. Among them, I'd like to talk about Mr. Zakir, who was an extraordinary teacher, a really good mentor, and who has a great influence in my education. I met Mr. Zakir when I was in class 9, and he was our math teacher. I initially thought that he would be a moody teacher and we would have to be very polite in front of him. This impression came mostly because of his serious face and tidy dress-up, but soon we found that he's a very friendly person and teaches us very well. He never made things complicated and tried over and over again to explain something to us. He had a very unique way of teaching. Seems like he would start an interesting story and later we would find that he would relate the math with the story. Thus, everything we learned from him was interesting, and that's why we remember most of the theory and techniques of math he taught us. I'd say he has a great influence in my education because he made a very strong foundation on mathematics. I'd say he has a great influence in my education because he made a very strong foundation on mathematics. Later on, I studied science and mathematics, and it was one of the most important subjects. I have always been good at math, and that's mainly because of Mr. Zakir, who had a major role on making the subject interesting to me. Before I learned math from Mr. Zakir, my impression on math was not good, and I considered mathematics to be a very difficult and uninteresting subject. But his teaching and influences changed my way of thinking about math. Later on, math became one of my most favorite subjects. Part 3. How has education changed in your country in the last 10 years? It has certainly some leaps and bounds, overcoming a lot of constraints and difficulties. When I was in school, we did not have grading system, so we had to depend on entirely marks and divisions. But in last 10 years, as the grading system was introduced, ways of education has become a whole lot different. Although it has some negative sides, it certainly made it easier for most of the students in terms of choosing varieties of subjects at will and getting good marks without having to study a lot. What changes do you foresee in the next 50 years? I believe the system will be more improved in next 50 years. Students won't have to rely on their memorizing skills. They can study subjects they are interested in. Teaching methods will be more practical and real-life based instead of textbook all the time. Education system will be designed in a way that it helps students when they hit job market. Page 177. How do the expectations of today's school leavers compare with those of the previous generation? The expectation of today's school leavers is very competent with modern technology compared to those of the previous generations. As we can see, today's school leavers have computer-based knowledge, including English language, that helps them stay optimistic to be able to get employed anywhere in the world, regardless of their background, whereas in the past, the scopes were very limited. What role do you think the extracurricular activities play in the education? Well, extracurricular activities do play a major role in education. It works as a refresher. After a heavy dose of studying, some extracurricular activities help students to brush off their fatigue and apply more concentration on the studies. A good student with good skills in sports or other stuffs is always handful and a matter of pride for any educational institute. What method of learning works best for you? To me, learning through real-life samples work best. I'm not very good at memorizing, so whenever I have to learn something without understanding it properly, I don't remember it well. There are schools where teachers teach with real-life examples, which certainly sounds like an effective way of teaching to me. How beneficial do you think it is to group students according to their level of ability? You see, in the classroom it sometimes is hard to keep focus. Having group settings within the classroom can be beneficial in some cases. With the group setting, not only do the students have the opportunity to help and discuss with each other, the group inspire each other and their grades will show proof of their work as a group and a whole.